The space station Luminara floated in the darkness like a city made of metal and light. It circled a dying red star, and thousands of aliens from hundreds of worlds lived and worked inside its long corridors. There were tall beings and short ones, creatures with scales and creatures with feathers, things that walked on two legs and things that slithered on none. They all came here to trade, to work, to find something better than what they had left behind. Among all these strange and wonderful beings, there was one human girl named Park Yuna. She was 24 years old, with black hair that she kept tied back and dark eyes that watched everything but said nothing. She worked in the lower decks of the station, fixing broken pipes and damaged wires in places where the radiation was too strong for other species. Her body could handle it. She came from Earth, after all, and Earth was what the galaxy called a Class 12, Deathworld. This meant her home planet was one of the most dangerous places in known space. The gravity was crushing. The air was filled with a poison called oxygen that most species could not breathe. The temperature changed wildly from burning hot to freezing cold. And everywhere, on every piece of land and in every body of water, there were predators designed by millions of years of evolution to kill and eat anything they could catch. Humans had survived all of this. They had not just survived. They had conquered their world and spread across it like fire. And now, slowly, they were spreading to the stars. But Yuna did not feel like a conqueror. She felt small and tired and very alone. Every day, she woke up in her tiny room, ate her simple breakfast, and went to work. She fixed things that were broken. She crawled through spaces too small for other workers. She handled materials that would burn or poison the delicate bodies of her alien coworkers. And when her shift ended, she went back to her room and slept. And then she did it all again. The other species on the station were afraid of her. She could see it in the way they moved aside when she walked past. She could hear it in the whispers that stopped when she entered a room. They knew what she was. They had heard the stories about Deathworlders, about the terrible things humans could do when they were angry or afraid. So Yuna made herself small. She spoke softly. She moved slowly. She smiled and nodded and never, ever raised her voice. She wanted them to see that she was not a monster. She was just a girl trying to earn enough money to send home to her grandmother. On Earth, there was a human man who visited the station sometimes. His name was Kang Do-yoon, and he was 30 years old with a kind face and worried eyes. He was the captain of a small trading ship, and he came to Luminara every few weeks to buy and sell goods. He noticed Yuna because she was human like him, but also because he saw something in her that troubled him. He saw how carefully she controlled herself. He saw the exhaustion behind her polite smile. He saw a woman who was holding something very heavy deep inside her chest. He tried to talk to her. He invited her to eat with him. He asked about her life and her family and her dreams. But Yuna kept him at a distance. She was polite but never warm. She answered his questions but never asked her own. She had built walls around her heart, and she was not ready to let anyone inside. Do-hyun did not push. He simply made sure she knew that if she ever needed a friend, he was there. There was a group of aliens on the lower decks who called themselves the Volturi. They were tall and beautiful, with bodies that looked like they were made of living crystal. They came from a paradise world with gentle gravity and soft light, a place where nothing ever hurt them and nothing ever made them afraid. They did not belong on the lower decks. But their leader, a cruel being named Sovereign Miru, had discovered something wonderful about the forgotten corners of the station. No one was watching. No one cared what happened to the poor workers who lived and worked in the shadows. It was the perfect place to build a small kingdom of fear. Miru and his gang demanded money from the workers. They called it protection fees. If you paid, they left you alone. If you did not pay, they hurt you. The station security never came down to the lower decks. The authorities did not care about the people who fixed their pipes and cleaned their waste. When the Valkyrie came to Yuna, she paid. She did not argue. She did not fight. She simply gave them what they asked for and went back to work. They came again. She paid again. They came again. And this time they wanted more. Yuna worked extra shifts. She ate less. She sent less money home to her grandmother. But she paid. Duhayan saw one of these encounters during one of his visits. He watched from a distance as 3 crystalline giants surrounded the small human woman and demanded credits from her. He watched her bow her head and hand over the money without a word of protest. It made him angry. He wanted to help. He wanted to step in and tell those crystal bastards to leave her alone. But when he looked at Yuna's face, he stopped. There was something there he did not understand. It was not fear, exactly. It was not weakness. It was something more like restraint, like she was holding herself back from something. Later, when the Valkyrie were gone, he approached her. "Why do you let them do that?" he asked. "You're a Deathworlder. You could fight back." Yuna looked at him for a long moment. Her dark eyes were calm, but there was something moving in their depths. Something old and cold and very, very dangerous. "That is exactly why I did not fight," she said quietly. "Because I know what I would do if I started." She walked away before he could ask what she meant. That night, in her small room, Yuna sat on her bed and looked at her hands. They were small hands, human hands, made for holding tools and touching loved ones and building things. They were also weapons. She knew this. She had always known this. Her body was a machine built by 4 billion years of survival on a world that tried to kill everything on it every single day. She was faster than she looked, stronger than she seemed, more dangerous than anyone on this station could possibly imagine. But she had promised herself a long time ago that she would never be a monster. She would be patient. She would be gentle. She would endure whatever she had to endure until she had enough money to go home. She just had to hold on a little longer. She did not know that something was coming that would break all her promises. The weeks passed slowly on Luminara Station, and things got worse. Sovereign Miru had become interested in Yuna, not because she had money, and not because she was useful. He was interested because she was a Deathworlder who acted like a frightened child. It amused him. It made him feel powerful. Here was a creature from one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy, and she bowed her head to him like a servant. He began to call for her. Small things at first. "Bring me this. Clean up that. Kneel when you speak to me." Yuna did as she was told. She swallowed her pride and her anger, and she obeyed. Because she knew that the alternative was violence. And violence was something she could not allow herself. The other workers on the lower decks watched her with pity and confusion. Some of them were scared of her, like everyone else. But some of them began to wonder if maybe the stories about Deathworlders were wrong. Maybe humans were not as dangerous as everyone said. Then one day, a new human arrived on the station. Her name was Jiu Wu, and she was 19 years old. She had bright eyes and a quick smile and a heart full of hope and curiosity. She had come from Earth to see the galaxy, to meet aliens, to have adventures. The universe was so big and so wonderful, and she wanted to see all of it. She was assigned to work with Yuna as a maintenance assistant. Yuna looked at this young girl and felt something crack in her chest. Jiu Wu reminded her of herself, a long time ago, before the loneliness and the fear had worn her down. Before she learned that the galaxy was not as kind as she had hoped, she tried to protect Jiu Wu. She kept her away from the dangerous parts of the lower decks. She made sure Jiu Wu was never alone when the Valkyrie were around. She warned her, without explaining too much, that there were people on the station who were not friendly, but Jiu Wu did not understand. She thought Yuna was being overprotective. She thought her mentor was worrying about nothing. The aliens she had met so far had been strange, but mostly kind. Why would anyone want to hurt her? Yuna could not explain. She could not tell Jiu Wu about the protection money, about Sovereign Miru, about the darkness that lived in the forgotten corners of the station. She was trying to protect Jiu Wu from the truth as much as from the danger. It was not enough. One night, there was an emergency on the far side of the station. A power conduit had exploded, and the repair crews needed every hand they could get. Yuna was called away to help. She did not want to leave Jiu Wu alone, but she had no choice. The station needed her. Before she left, she found Jiu Wu and grabbed her hands. "Stay in the main corridors," she said. "Do not go to the storage base. Do not talk to the tall crystal beings if you see them. Wait for me to come back." Jiu Wu laughed and said she would be fine. She was a grown woman, not a child. She could take care of herself. Yuna wanted to argue, but there was no time. She ran to the emergency, and she spent the next 6 hours fixing broken systems and saving lives. She worked so hard that she forgot to be afraid. When she finally finished, when she finally made her way back to the lower decks, Kang Go-hin was waiting for her. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. He looked like he had seen something terrible. "Yuna," he said, and his voice broke on her name. "It's Jiu Wu. They found her in storage bay 12. The Valkyrie, they..." He could not finish. He did not need to doubt why Yuna felt the world go still around her. The sounds of the station faded away. The lights seemed to dim. Everything became very quiet and very clear. "Where is she now?" Yuna asked. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. Flat, empty, like something had been removed from it. "Medical bay. She's alive, but..." Do-yoon wiped his eyes. "Yuna, I'm so sorry. I should have been watching. I should have done something." Yuna was not listening anymore. She was walking, moving toward the medical bay, her feet carrying her without any conscious decision. Do-hyun followed, still talking, still apologizing, but his words were just noise. She found Jiu Wu in a bed, covered in bandages and bruises. The young girl was unconscious, her face swollen, her breathing shallow and weak. The medical officer, a four-armed being with gentle eyes, told Yuna that Jiu Wu would live. But it would take a long time for her body to heal, and even longer for her mind. Yuna stood by the bed and looked at the girl she had failed to protect. She looked at the bruises on Jiu Wu's arms, the cuts on her face, the way she flinched even in her sleep. She thought about what the Valkyrie had done to her. She thought about Sovereign Miru and his cruel laughter. Something inside Yuna changed. It was not like a door opening. It was like a chain breaking. For years, she had held herself back. She had controlled every muscle, every instinct, every natural response. She had made herself small and quiet and harmless because she was afraid of what she might become if she let go. But now, looking at Jiu Wu, she realized that her restraint had not protected anyone. Her gentleness had not prevented suffering. Her patience had only given the predators time to find new prey. She had been a fool. Do-yoon was still standing behind her, still worried, still confused about what was happening. "Yuna," he said carefully, "what are you going to do?" She turned to look at him, and he took a step back. There was something in her eyes that he had never seen before. Something ancient and cold and utterly without mercy. "Where are they?" she asked. Her voice was calm, too calm. It was the voice of someone who had stopped feeling anything at all. Do-hyun hesitated. He knew he should not tell her. He knew that something terrible was about to happen. But when he looked at Jiu Wu, broken and bleeding in her hospital bed, he could not find it in himself to protect the creatures who had done this. "Cargo Bay 7, he said. "That's where they gather at night. Yuna, wait. Let me call security. Let me help you. You can't just..." but she was already gone. One moment she was standing beside him, and the next moment she was moving down the corridor faster than he had ever seen a human move. It was like watching a predator leap from stillness into deadly motion. He blinked, and she was gone. Doyun stood alone in the medical bay, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked at Jiu Wu, still sleeping her broken sleep. He thought about calling station security. He thought about trying to stop what was about to happen. Then, he thought about what the Valkyrie had done to a 19-year-old girl whose only crime was being young. And, trusting Dot, he sat down next to Jiu Wu's bed and waited. Whatever happened next, they had brought it on themselves. Cargo Bay 7 was a large room deep in the lower decks of Luminara Station. Long ago, it had been used to store supplies and equipment. Now it belonged to the Valkyrie. They had made it their kingdom. Stolen goods lined the walls. Comfortable furniture, taken from frightened workers, filled the space. Lights hung from the ceiling, making the crystalline bodies of the Valkyrie glow like living jewels. There were 12 of them, each one tall and beautiful, and utterly without mercy. Sovereign Miru sat on a throne made from broken machinery, watching his followers celebrate. They were laughing about the human girl, the young one with the bright eyes. They were sharing stories about her screams, her tears, the way she had begged them to stop. It had been wonderful entertainment, the best they had enjoyed in months. One of the Valkyrie raised a glass of stolen wine. "To the Deathworlders," he said mockingly. "May they always be so easy to break." The others laughed. Miru smiled his cold, crystalline smile. Then the lights went out. For a moment, there was only darkness and confused voices. The Valkyrie did not like the dark. Their beautiful eyes, evolved for their bright paradise world, could not see well without light. They called out to each other, demanding to know what had happened. Stumbling through the blackness toward the walls, someone found an emergency light panel. Fingers pressed buttons. Nothing happened. "What is going on?" Miru demanded. His voice was less confident now. Something was wrong. Something he could not control. And then, from somewhere in the darkness, a voice spoke. "You hurt her." It was a quiet voice. A human voice. A woman's voice. The Valkyrie froze. They knew that voice. It belonged to the maintenance worker, the small one who always paid her fees and never caused trouble. The one who bowed her head and did what she was told. "The human," one of Miru's lieutenants said, trying to sound brave. "It's just the human. She has come to beg for her friend." But before he could say anything else, something hit him. It came out of the darkness like a striking snake, faster than his eyes could follow, and suddenly he was flying backward through the air. He hit the wall with a sound like breaking glass and slid to the floor in pieces. The Valkyrie were a crystalline species. Their bodies were beautiful but fragile. They were not made for violence. They came from a world where nothing ever attacked them, where every creature was gentle and every day was safe. They had never faced a predator before. Now they were trapped in the dark with one. Screams filled the cargo bay. Bodies shattered. Crystalline limbs flew through the air. The Valkyrie tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. They tried to fight, but they could not see their enemy. They could only hear her, moving through the darkness, moving faster than anything they had ever seen, striking without warning and disappearing before they could react. The emergency lights finally flickered on, filling the room with dim red light. Park Yuna stood in the center of the cargo bay. She was not a monster. She looked like a normal human woman, small and tired, with black hair and dark eyes. But she was covered in crystalline dust, the remains of the Valkyrie she had already destroyed. And her eyes were empty of everything except cold. Terrible purpose. 8 of Mira's followers were already dead. Their bodies were scattered around the room, shattered beyond recognition. The 4 survivors, including Miru himself, stood frozen against the far wall, their beautiful crystal bodies trembling with fear. "Please," one of them whispered. "Please, we did not mean." Yuna moved again. She was not even trying hard. Her body, adapted to Earth's crushing gravity, found the station's lighter pull almost laughable. Her muscles, built by evolution to fight and flee and survive the most dangerous planet in the galaxy, worked perfectly in this environment. Her instincts, inherited from thousands of generations of hunters and warriors, guided her movements without conscious thought. She was not fighting. She was hunting. Two more Velthari shattered before Miru could blink. Their screams were cut short, their beautiful bodies broken like dropped glass. Then there was only Miru and one of his guards, pressed against the wall, watching death walk toward them. "You," Yuna said, pointing at the guard. "Run. Tell others what happened here. Tell them what happens when they hurt my people." The guard did not need to be told twice. He ran, his crystalline legs carrying him out of the cargo bay and into the corridors beyond. He would spend the rest of his life having nightmares about this night. Then it was just Yuna and Sovereign Miru. He was the tallest Velthari she had ever seen. Nearly 8 feet of gleaming crystal, covered in decorative patterns that showed his high status. He had ruled these decks through fear and violence. He had hurt countless workers, destroyed countless lives, and never faced any consequences. Until now. "Wait," he said, holding up his crystalline hands. "Wait, please. I can pay you. I can give you anything you want. Credits, power, protection. Just tell me what you want, and it is yours." Yuna walked toward him slowly. She was in no hurry now. Did she beg? Yuna asked. Her voice was still quiet, still empty. "Jiu Wu, when you were hurting her, did she beg you to stop?" Miru's crystal face could not sweat, could not show fear the way a human face could. But his voice shook when he answered. She did not understand. We were just teaching her. We were just showing her. Yuna grabbed one of his arms and broke it. The crystal shattered with a sound like breaking ice, and Miru screamed. "Did you stop?" Yuna asked. "When she begged. Did you show her mercy?" "Please. Please, I am sorry. I am so sorry." She broke another arm. Then a leg. Then the other leg. She broke him slowly and carefully, asking questions between each snap, making sure he was conscious for every moment of it. She was not enjoying herself. She felt nothing at all. She was simply doing what needed to be done. When the station security finally arrived, called by Do-yoon, who had decided that someone needed to witness what was happening, they found Yuna sitting quietly among the ruins of Miru's kingdom. 10 Velthari were dead. 1 had fled. 1 was lying on the ground, every limb shattered, whimpering in agony. Yuna looked up at the security officers. They were Kethrani, tall insectoid warriors with hard shells and sharp claws. They were supposed to be the most dangerous species on the station. They took one look at the small, human woman and stepped backward. Her eyes were calm. Her hands were still. She did not look like a killer. She looked like someone who had finished a difficult job and was ready to rest. "I am done," she said quietly. "You can arrest me now." The Kethrani looked at each other. They looked at the carnage around them. They looked at the small human woman who had done all of this with nothing but her bare hands. Slowly, carefully, as if approaching a bomb that might explode at any moment. They moved forward to take her into custody. Yuna did not resist. She simply stood up, put her hands behind her back, and let them lead her away. Behind her, Sovereign Miru continued to scream. They put Yuna in the maximum security cell. It was the strongest holding cell on Luminara station, designed to contain the most dangerous criminals in the sector. The walls were thick metal. The door had 7 locks. There were energy fields and motion sensors and armed guards watching every moment. it was built to hold monsters. Yuna sat on the hard bed and looked at her hands. There was no crystal dust on them anymore. Someone had cleaned her up before putting her in the cell, but she could still feel the sensation of breaking bones, still hear the sounds of shattering glass. She did not regret what she had done. She only felt empty. The news spread across the station within hours. A human woman had killed 10 Velthari warriors in less than 3 minutes. She had used no weapons, no technology, nothing but her bare hands and her Deathworld body. The security footage, before it was classified and locked away, was seen by thousands. Aliens who had dismissed humans as merely dangerous began to understand the truth. Humans were not merely dangerous. They were the products of the most hostile planet anyone had ever discovered. They were predators who had conquered their world through violence and intelligence and an absolute refusal to die. And when one of them was pushed too far, when someone hurt the people they loved, they became something terrifying. Ambassador Thren of the Velthari sovereignty arrived on the station 3 days later. He was tall and proud and filled with cold rage. He demanded justice. He called Yuna a murderer, a terrorist, a threat to all civilized beings. He wanted her executed immediately, preferably in a way that would cause maximum suffering. But something unexpected happened. The workers of the lower decks began to speak. They came forward one by one, then in groups, then in crowds. They told stories about the Velthari gang. They showed evidence of years of extortion, violence, and abuse. They described the beatings, the threats, the protection money they had been forced to pay. They explained how station security had ignored their complaints, how the authorities had looked the other way, how Sovereign Miru had been allowed to build his little kingdom of fear without any consequence. And they spoke about Jiu Wu. The young human girl was still in the medical bay, slowly healing from her injuries. She could not testify herself, but the medical records spoke clearly enough. What the Velthari had done to her was not discipline or teaching. It was assault. It was cruelty. It was the act of predators who believed they would never be punished. Commander Vex, the Kethrani security chief, was forced to investigate. What she found made her ashamed. For years, crimes had been committed in the lower decks while her officers looked the other way. Workers had been victimized, and no one had cared. Until one human woman had finally done something about it. Ambassador Thren demanded that the investigation be stopped. He threatened to withdraw the Velthari sovereignty from the station's trade agreements. He spoke of war and consequences and the terrible power of his people, but the evidence was too strong. The testimony was too clear. Even the Galactic Council could not ignore what had happened. Kang Do-hyun became Yuna's advocate. He had no legal training, no political power, no special influence. He was just a cargo ship captain who had watched a good woman be pushed too far. But he refused to let her face this alone. He gathered evidence. He interviewed witnesses. He filed reports and requests and appeals. He spent every credit he had on lawyers and consultants. He barely slept, barely ate, barely did anything except fight for Yuna's freedom. When Jiu Wu was well enough to leave the medical bay, she joined him. The young woman who had been broken by the Velthari refused to stay silent. She testified about what had been done to her. She spoke about Yuna's kindness, about how her mentor had tried to protect her, about how none of this would have happened if the station had done its job. The Galactic Council held a formal hearing. They reviewed the evidence. They watched the security footage. They listened to the survivors and the witnesses and the experts. In the end, they offered Yuna a choice. She could face trial for murder under Velthari law. If convicted, she would be executed in a manner chosen by the families of her victims. The trial would be held on a Velthari world, judged by Velthari officials, with Velthari lawyers arguing against her, or she could accept permanent exile from all Galactic Council space. She would never again be allowed on any station, planet, or ship within Council jurisdiction. She would be cast out into the frontier sectors, the lawless regions where Council protection did not reach. It was not justice. The Velthari had tormented workers for years without punishment. Jiu Wu had been brutalized by laughing monsters. And Yuna was the one facing consequences. But Yuna was tired of fighting. She was tired of hoping that the universe would be fair. She had done what she needed to do, and now she just wanted to be free. "Exile," she said. Dohyun immediately volunteered to transport her. His ship was small and old, but it was his, and he could take her wherever she wanted to go. The council agreed. They were happy to be rid of her. On her last day on the station, as she was being escorted to Dohyun's ship, Yuna passed Ambassador Thren in a corridor. He was 7 feet tall, armored in ceremonial crystal that could stop a plasma bolt. He was surrounded by guards, protected by the full power of the Velthari sovereignty. But when he saw her coming, he pressed himself against the wall. "This is not over, Deathworlder," he hissed as she walked past. "My people have long memories. You will pay for what you have done." Yuna stopped. She turned to look at him. The ambassador was tall and powerful and surrounded by allies. She was small and tired and wearing prison clothes. But when their eyes met, he was the one who looked away first. "It should be over," she said quietly. "Meru and his gang hurt innocent people for years, and no one stopped them. Your people let it happen. Your laws protected them. So I did what I had to do." She stepped closer. The guards around Thren raised their weapons, but none of them fired. They had seen the footage. They knew what she could do. "But if your people come after me again," she continued, her voice still soft and calm, "if you hurt anyone I care about, ever again, I will not leave survivors next time." She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she turned and walked away. Ambassador Thren stood frozen in the corridor long after she was gone. His guards looked at each other nervously. None of them spoke. At the docking bay, Dohyun was waiting with his ship. Jiu Wu was there too, her bags packed, her decision made. "You do not have to come," Yuna told her. "The frontier is dangerous. There is no law, no protection. You could stay here or go back to Earth, or you saved my life," Jiu Wu said simply. "You gave up everything for me. Where else would I go?" Yuna looked at the young woman she had failed to protect, who had been hurt because of her, who was now choosing to follow her into exile. She did not know what to say. So she just nodded and led the way onto the ship. The engines hummed to life. The docking clamps released. The little cargo vessel pulled away from Luminara station and turned toward the stars. Behind them, the station grew smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light in the darkness. Ahead of them, the unknown waited. 1 year had passed since the night that changed everything. Park Yuna stood in the cargo bay of the Silver Dawn, the ship that had become her home. She was doing what she always did when she had free time: maintenance. Checking the filters, testing the seals, making sure everything was working properly. Old habits died hard. The ship was small and old, but it was theirs. Kang Go-hyun was the captain, handling the trading and the negotiations. Jiu Wu was the engineer, learning everything she could about keeping a ship flying in deep space. And Yuna was whatever they needed her to be. They ran cargo in the frontier sectors, the lawless regions beyond Galactic Council space. It was dangerous work. Pirates hunted these corridors. Warlords controlled the stations. There was no law except the law of the strong, but they survived. More than that, they prospered. Rumors followed them everywhere they went. Stories about Luminara Station, about the human woman who had killed 10 Velthari warriors with her bare hands. The tales grew with each telling. Some versions said she had killed 50. Others claimed she had destroyed an entire deck of the station. A few whispered that she was a secret weapon, a super soldier created by the human military for war. The truth was simpler. She was just a maintenance worker who had been pushed too far, but the legend was useful. Pirates who heard their ship was crewed by humans often decided to find easier prey. Station owners who might have cheated them thought twice when they saw Yuna standing quietly behind Doyun during negotiations. The reputation of a Deathworlder, especially one with her history, opened doors and closed threats. Other humans in the sector began to find them. Word spread through the scattered human communities of the frontier that there was a ship where their kind was welcome. Engineers, traders, refugees, wanderers. They came one by one, looking for something they had lost among the stars, looking for their people. The Silver Dawn could not carry them all, but Dohyun helped them find other ships, other crews, other places where they might belong. Slowly, carefully, a network began to form. Humans looking out for each other in a galaxy that often treated them with fear. Yuna did not think of herself as a leader. She fixed things. She protected her crew. She tried not to hurt anyone who did not deserve it. But she noticed that when problems arose, people looked to her for answers. When danger came, they stood behind her. She was still learning how to feel about that dot the Valkyrie had not forgotten. Ambassador Thren, true to his word, had placed a bounty on her head. Not a legal one, officially, but enough credits to tempt the desperate and the greedy. Bounty hunters came looking for her sometimes. They did not find what they expected. On this particular day, a new hunter had tracked them to a remote refueling station at the edge of known space. His name was Korath, and he was a Skarathi assassin. 8 limbs, natural armor, claws that could cut through metal. He had killed dozens of targets and never failed to collect the bounty. He found Yuna alone in the cargo bay, doing maintenance, just as she always did. "Bark, Yuna," he announced, stepping through the door with all 8 limbs ready for combat. "You are worth a fortune dead. I will make it quick if you do not resist." Yuna set down her tools. She stood up slowly, wiping her hands on her work clothes. She faced the assassin calmly, without fear, without anger. She looked tired. "I am going to give you one chance," she said. "One more than I gave the last ones. Walk away." Karth laughed. It was a wet, clicking sound that came from deep in his armored throat. He was twice her size, armed with military-grade weapons, trained since birth for exactly this kind of work. The idea that this small human woman could threaten him was ridiculous. "Little Deathworlder," he said, moving closer, "I have killed beings 10 times your size. I have hunted prey across a dozen worlds. You are nothing but—" She moved. It happened so fast that Karth did not even see it. One moment she was standing still, 5 meters away. The next moment she was beside him, her small hands gripping his primary combat limbs. Then there was pain, terrible pain, and he was on the ground with 4 of his 8 limbs bent at impossible angles. He had not even had time to scream. Yuna crouched beside him, looking into his compound eyes. She was not breathing hard. She had not even raised her voice. This had been as easy for her as fixing a broken pipe. "Tell your employers something," she said quietly. "Tell them that humans do not want war. We left our death world hoping to find peace among the stars. We smile and bow and try so hard to be gentle, because we know what we are." She leaned closer. Her dark eyes reflected his terrified face. "But if you keep pushing us, if you keep hurting the people we love, you will learn why nothing on Earth ever successfully hunted us. You will learn why we are the only thinking species to survive a Class 12 world. You will learn what happens when you make a predator stop pretending to be prey." She stood up. "Now go. And be grateful that I am still trying to be gentle." Korath fled. He limped to his ship with his broken limbs dragging behind him, and he flew away as fast as his engines could carry him. He never took another contract on a human. He told other hunters to stay away from them. He had nightmares about dark eyes and gentle voices for the rest of his life. The legend grew. Du Hyan found Yuna in the cargo bay an hour later, back to her maintenance work as if nothing had happened. He looked at the scratches on the floor where the assassin had fallen, the drops of alien blood that had not yet been cleaned. "Another one?" he asked. "Another one," she confirmed. He sat down on a crate near her, watching her work. After a year together, they understood each other better than words could express. He knew what she was. He knew what she could do. And he loved her anyway. "Do you ever wish things were different?" he asked. "That you could just be normal? That you did not have to be this?" Yuna stopped working. She looked at her hands again, as she often did. Small hands. Human hands. Weapons. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But then I think about Jiu Wu, about you, about all the people who depend on us. And I realize that being this way is how I can protect them, how I can keep them safe." She looked up at him. "We are what we are, Doyen. Humans evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We became survivors, fighters, predators. We cannot change that. We can only choose what to do with it." She went back to her work. "I choose to protect the people I love, whatever that costs." Far away, on a station at the edge of known space, a young alien child tugged on their parent's arm. They had seen a human ship docking, a small vessel called the Silver Dawn. They were curious about the strange beings inside. "Tell me about the Deathworlders," the child said. "Why is everyone so scared of them?" The parent pulled the child close and spoke quietly. "They are kind, little one, when you are kind to them. They smile and laugh and build wonderful things. They love their families and help their friends and try very hard to live in peace with others." The parent looked at the docking bay, where 3 humans were walking toward the trade market. A tall man, a young woman with bright eyes, and a smaller woman with dark hair who moved like she was always ready for something. "But never, ever make one angry," the parent continued. "Never hurt someone they love. Because underneath all their smiles and soft words, they remember how to be monsters. And when they stop being gentle," the parent shuddered, "nothing in the galaxy can stop them." The child watched the humans walk past, fascinated and a little frightened. The dark-haired woman glanced at them, and for a moment, just a moment, she smiled. It was a kind smile, a gentle smile, the smile of someone who just wanted to live in peace. The child smiled back, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the legend of Park Yuna continued to grow. The maintenance worker who became a warrior, the quiet woman who became a nightmare, the Deathworlder who was driven too far, and taught the galaxy what humans really were, not monsters, just people who had learned long ago that sometimes the only way to protect the ones you love is to become the most dangerous thing in the room, and to never, ever apologize for it.